Hello and welcome back to the Marathon HSC podcast, the podcast dedicated to senior high school students undertaking the HSC. I'm your host, Sarah, and this is episode 8 of season 1, the English series on the common module Texts and Human Experiences. Today, we're taking a deep dive into the 5th of many common module texts, and the first of the many poems we'll be exploring together, and it's Mary Dobson's collective poems, specifically her poem Young Girl at a Window. We'll be looking into everything you'll need to craft your common module notes, from values to themes, context, characters, and so much more. But most importantly, keep your ears ready to catch the insightful gems I'll be sharing to help you with your common module Mary Dobson essays. So, let's dive into this text. A quick recap of the text. Mary Dobson's poem, Young Girl at a Window, was written in 1943, and it's about a young girl standing at a window and looking outside. She feels curious and hopeful about the world beyond her home. The window represents the boundary between her safe, familiar life and the exciting, unknown experiences waiting for her as she grows up. The poem captures the moment when she starts to realize there is much more to explore and learn outside her small world. Context. Mary Dobson's Young Girl at a Window was written in the early 20th century, a period marked by significant social changes and events that influenced the poem's context. I'm going to jump into the social context first so we can better understand what was happening socially at the time the text Young Girl at a Window was written. During this time, societal expectations for young girls and women were strict, with a strong emphasis on domestic roles and limited opportunities for independence and self-expression. The poem's depiction of a young girl looking out a window can be seen as a metaphor for her desire to break free from these constraints and explore a world of greater possibilities. The earlier 20th century also saw increasing advocacy for women's education and rights. More girls were attending school and dreaming of careers and lives beyond traditional domestic roles, in the home. Hence, the poem reflects the aspirations of young girls during this time. This period experienced rapid urbanization and technological advancements, leading to a broader worldview and exposure to new ideas. The girl's curiosity and longing to see beyond her immediate surroundings can be linked to the era's spirit of exploration and change. The early 20th century was a time of cultural shifts, with art, literature, and social movements challenging old norms and exploring new ways of thinking. The poem resonates with the themes of personal growth and the quest for identity that were prominent at the time. Let's also look at the historical context and the key events and circumstances that occurred in the period Young Girl at a Window was written. The historical context of Mary Dobson's poem Young Girl at a Window, written in the early 20th century, can be understood by looking at several aspects of the time period. First up, we've got World War I, which lasted from 1914 till 1918. The poem's era was marked by the profound impact of the First World War. The war brought significant social and economic challenges, altering traditional gender roles as women took on roles previously held by men who went to fight. This shift opened up new possibilities for women, but it also left many questioning their future roles in society. Second, we've got the women's suffrage movement. The early 20th century was a crucial time for the women's suffrage movement. Women in various countries were campaigning for, and in some places, gaining the right to vote. For instance, women in the United States gained suffrage in 1920 with the 19th Amendment. This movement was part of a broader push for greater gender equality and expanded opportunities for women. Number 3, technological advancements and urbanization were transforming daily life. Innovations such as the telephone, the automobile, and electricity were becoming more widespread, changing how people lived and interacted. Urbanization brought people from rural areas to cities, exposing them to new ideas and lifestyles. Fourth, the educational reforms that the early 20th century saw, with more emphasis on providing education to girls and improving the quality of education overall. This period saw a push towards more progressive education practices, encouraging critical thinking, and broader learning opportunities for young people. Number 5, cultural shifts. The early 20th century was a time of significant cultural change. The arts, including literature, music, and visual arts, were undergoing transformations with movements like modernism, challenging traditional forms and expressing new, often radical, ideas. And finally, the period following World War I was marked by economic fluctuations. The post-war economy initially boomed but faced challenges such as the Great Depression beginning in 1929. These economic conditions influenced people's outlook on the future and their roles within society. Finally, let's look at the personal context of the author and what Mary Dobson's life looked like before and during the writing of this poem. As a woman, writing in the early 20th century, Dobson would have been acutely aware of the limited roles available to women and the growing movements advocating for women's rights. Her personal experiences with these societal expectations could have influenced her portrayal of the young girl's longing and curiosity. Dobson's education would have shaped her perspective and writing style. If she had access to higher education, it might have exposed her to contemporary literary and feminist ideas, influencing her work. Education reform was a significant issue during this period, and her experiences could have inspired themes of growth and learning in the poem. Living through a time of significant cultural change, including the rise of modernist literature and art, Dobson might have been influenced by these movements. These cultural shifts often focused on themes of self-discovery, identity, and breaking away from traditional norms, which are reflected in the poem. Poets often draw on personal reflections and emotions, and the theme of a young girl gazing out a window might mirror Dobson's own feelings of introspection, longing, or contemplation about her future or her place in society. Finally, experiencing the aftermath of World War I and the significant social and economic changes of the early 20th century, Dobson might have been influenced by the uncertainty and transformative nature of the times. These broader historical contexts likely impacted her personal outlook and themes explored in her poetry. Traditional values. Now, my job here is to try and shape your perspective as best as I can for each of your texts. In order to do my job well, I have to provide various points of view. Let's look at the traditional values at the time Mary Dobson wrote Young Girl at a Window so we can see what ideas were at play at the time, and what ideas people believed in. When Mary Dobson wrote Young Girl at a Window in the early 20th century, several traditional values were prevalent in society. These values influenced social norms, family structures, and individual behaviour, particularly for women. Here are some of the key traditional values of the time. Obviously, we've got gender roles. Society had well-defined roles for men and women, and for most of time, this has been true. Men were generally expected to be the breadwinners and head of the households, while women were expected to be homemakers, focusing on raising children and managing the home. Marriage was often seen as the ultimate goal for women. A woman's social status and identity were closely tied to her role as a wife and mother. There was strong emphasis on family unity, with women playing central roles in maintaining family cohesion. Women were expected to be modest, both in behaviour and dress. Social norms dictated that women should be polite, reserved, and adhere to certain standards of behaviour in public and private life. Educational opportunities for women were limited compared to men. While basic education was increasingly accessible, higher education and professional careers were less common for women, who were often discouraged from pursuing ambitions outside the home. Traditional values emphasised obedience to male authority figures, such as fathers and husbands. Women were expected to be subservient and supportive, prioritising their family's needs over their own desires or aspirations. Religion also played a significant role in shaping societal expectations, with many traditional values being rooted in religious teachings, which promote virtues such as piety, chastity, and fidelity. Social interactions were governed by strict etiquette. Women were expected to conduct themselves with grace and propriety, avoiding behaviours that might be considered scandalous or inappropriate. Women were also often economically dependent on their fathers or husbands. This economic reliance reinforced traditional power dynamics within the household and limited women's autonomy. These traditional values created a framework with which women navigated their lives, and the tension between these values and the changing societal landscape likely influenced Dobson's portrayal of the young girl at a window, symbolising a yearning for greater freedom and opportunities beyond the confines of these expectations. Themes and concepts explored. Mary Dobson's poem, Young Girl at a Window, captures several prominent themes. We've got innocence and awakening, number 1. The poem often explores the innocence of youth and the moment of awakening to the broader world. The young girl at a window symbolises the transition from the sheltered life of childhood to the awareness of the complexities and possibilities of the world outside. The second prevalent theme here is curiosity and longing. The imagery of the girl looking out the window suggests a sense of curiosity and longing. She's intrigued by what lies beyond her immediate surroundings, yearning to understand the experience more. Another theme we have is isolation and reflection, because the window acts as a barrier between the girl and the world outside, emphasising a sense of isolation. This separation provides a moment of reflection, where the girl contemplates her place in the world and her future. Growth and change is another theme that's explored. The young girl symbolises the potential for growth, and the window represents the threshold to new experiences and stages of life. And finally, hope and imagination is explored because the view from the window symbolises hope and the power of imagination. The girl envisions a world full of possibilities and dreams, highlighting the optimism of youth. Purpose of the author. Mary Dobson's purpose in writing Young Girl at a Window can be inferred from the themes and imagery in the poem. Here are some possible purposes. Dobson likely aimed to capture the transitional phase between childhood innocence and the awareness that comes with growing up. The young girl at a window symbolises this moment of introspection and awakening to new possibilities. By depicting the girl looking out the window, Dobson may have also wanted to emphasise the natural curiosity and longing for something beyond the familiar. This could reflect a desire for exploration, knowledge, and new experiences. The poem subtly addresses the constraints placed on young girls and women during the early 20th century, which leads me to believe Dobson might have been highlighting the limited opportunities available to women and the desire to break free from traditional roles and expectations. The window serves as a metaphor for the barrier between the girl and the outside world, but it also represents the threshold of new opportunities. Hence, Dobson might have aimed to convey a message of hope and the importance of imagination in envisioning a different future. Dobson could be emphasizing the importance of introspection in understanding one's place in the world and contemplating future paths, given that the poem's setting suggests a sense of isolation, providing the girl with a moment of reflection, something that Dobson may also be recommending. Now, let's think about the poem's impact on the audience. Readers, especially young women, might relate to the girl's feelings of curiosity and longing, evoking empathy and personal reflection. The poem also highlights the limitations imposed on women during the 20th century, prompting readers to consider historical and contemporary gender roles and inequalities. The poem's depiction of a young girl's transition from innocence to awareness can evoke nostalgia in readers, reminding them of their own formative experiences. The themes of hope and potential may inspire readers to pursue their dreams and explore new opportunities despite societal constraints. The poem encourages readers to value moments of reflection and introspection as important for personal growth and self-understanding. And finally, by focusing on the girl's gaze out the window, the poem can stimulate readers' imagination about the world beyond their immediate surroundings and the possibilities it holds. Before we get into the most important points from this one of Dobson's texts, I want to share with you a word from our amazing sponsors for our podcasts. Sponsors help us reach our goal of keeping education free for you all to access on the go, meaning you guys can all continue listening here without subscriptions, which is my utmost priority. Now, if you haven't already heard of Notion, it's the perfect tool to help you build your organization skills from the ground up. It's got an integrated calendar to keep all your crazy busy schedules in one place, and multiple tabs in areas where you can keep all your assignments organized, so you can tick them off and keep track of them, which is how I personally like to use Notion. Plus, there are hundreds of videos out there teaching you how to set yourself up for success on Notion. If this sounds like as much of a catch to you as it does to myself, click on the link in the show notes, which you can find in the description box of this episode and on the Instagram linktree, and sign up for some blazing productivity benefits. Alright, let's hear it for the key insights and thesis statements. Grab a pen, your phone, something to take notes with if you haven't been doing so already, and listen carefully. This is an important part I want you to take note of. These can be used as your thesis statements that help shape the paragraphs of your essays. Alright, so I'm starting now. Be prepared to catch these thesis statements. Number 1. Young Girl at a Window poignantly captures the moment of a young girl's transition from childhood innocence to an expanded awareness of the wider world and its possibilities. Number 2. Dobson's poem subtly critiques the societal constraints placed on women in the early 20th century, highlighting the young girl's longing for freedom and opportunity. Number 3. Through the image of a young girl gazing out a window, the poem emphasizes the importance of hope and imagination in envisioning a future full of potential. Number 4. Young Girl at a Window explores themes of isolation and reflection, suggesting that moments of introspection are crucial for personal growth and self-discovery. And number 5. The poem underscores a universal desire for growth and change, portraying the young girl as a symbol of the human quest for new experiences and self-improvement. Finally, how has Mary Dobson's text maintained textual integrity? How does she do it? Why is it that we read her text today? Well, the poem addresses universal themes such as innocence, curiosity, aspiration, and the desire for freedom. These themes resonate across different time periods, allowing the poem to remain relevant and compelling to contemporary readers. Now, I do have to mention, Dobson does use some exquisite vivid imagery, such as the young girl at a window, to create a poignant and memorable scene. This imagery evokes emotions and sparks imagination, making the poem impactful and memorable. The window also serves as a powerful symbol throughout the poem, representing boundaries, aspirations, and the transition from childhood to adulthood. This symbolism adds depth and layers of meaning, inviting readers to interpret the text on multiple levels. Dobson's exploration of emotions like longing, hope, and introspection resonates with readers on a personal level. The poem captures the human experience of yearning for growth and understanding, making it emotionally engaging. Dobson's skillful use of language, rhythm, and structure enhances the poem's aesthetic appeal and readability. Her mastery of poetic techniques ensures that the text is not only meaningful, but also artfully composed. Hence, we read Mary Dobson's text today because it offers a timeless exploration of human emotions and aspirations, wrapped in evocative language and symbolism. She plays with her literary techniques to create a poem that carries an enduring relevance that lies in its ability to provoke thought, stir emotions, and speak to the universal aspects of the human experience across generations. For some in-depth analysis and annotations of the text, as well as Bantik's responses to Mary Dobson's poems, literary critiques of the techniques she uses, and more, head to the Marathon HSC website linked in the show notes caption and in our link tree on our Instagram bio. And that's it from me for today. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you haven't already, we're on all social media platforms at Marathon HSC. So give us a follow to see some of our podcast highlights and to see some explanations to short answer questions about HSC, and everything under that umbrella. If you liked what you heard in today's episode, click that follow button so you can be notified of our upcoming episodes. Remember, Marathon HSC is here to save you in all your subjects. And with the common module texts underway for the English syllabus, we'll be moving on to some other subjects too. Last of all, be sure to let me know if you have any questions about what we've covered today in the Q&A box attached to this podcast episode, and I would be happy to discuss them in the very next episode. This is Sarah from the Marathon HSC podcast, and I will see you all back here in our next episode.